Attorney Chloe Corbett, aka the Duchess of Justice. And with me I have
Attorney Augustus Corbett, aka the Minister of Justice.
We are the Defiant Lawyers. We provide legal analysis of trending politics, policies, personalities, and pop culture to empower you to defy an unjust legal system. Before we get into today's topic, please go ahead and like this video. We are live. We're streaming on Facebook, YouTube, and this will be on our pod today. Today's topic is Rittenhouse was found not guilty. And my synopsis is another not guilty verdict in America, another day of injustice. What are your thoughts, Dad? Let's get into it.
Yeah, mine too. I mean, there's so much to say right here. I got so much to say about the Kyle Rittenhouse verdict. It's not surprising.
At all.
We thought this would happen. We were hoping that he would have gotten convicted of something. But, you know, the jury said no.
Yeah.
So we're gonna parse it.
Yes. And just to give the people a little bit of backstory who have not been following this track closely, Kyle Rittenhouse is a teenager. He's 19 now, but he was 17 when this incident occurred. He went to the Jacob Blake protest and last year.
I don't know. I don't know if you forgot. We need to play our introduction.
I did. My bad.
All right. So here we go.
That Corbin and Corbett legal team fighting for the rights of the people. That father-daughter team investing in the youth when the system ain't treating them equal. Providing truth for our people, we able to reach them. So anytime you get accused for a crime and Lord knows you ain't do it, we here to get you through it. Exemplifying prudence and glorifying God, making sure you're compensated for other people's doings. Our vision is to be one of the best. We're small enough to focus on your matter throughout the neighborhoods of Dallas. Working constantly and making sure your rights are protected. A firm team of lawyers, aggressive, effective. A team that has your back in the courtroom. Two well-spoken black lawyers in the courtroom. Investing time and resources when it's evident that you were treated wrong. Now you walking out of Dallas courtroom with a settlement. Corbin and Corbett, the father-daughter legal tag team that has your back in the courtroom. Our purpose is simple. The outcome for each client and glorify Christ in all we do. Our vision is to be one of the best and most...
All right, now we can go.
Now we can go, guys. I apologize about that. I'm just so ready to talk about this verdict.
Yes.
I have so much to say about it. We have been covering this trial in our videos for the past 3 or 4 videos. So we have been pretty in tune with what has been going on in Kenosha up until this point, and we have a lot to say about it. What I was doing before the intro is giving just a brief summary of what this trial was about. Kyle Rittenhouse was 17 years old when he went to a Jacob Blake protest, who was a black man who was shot by the police in Wisconsin. And at that protest, he shot 3 men. He killed 2 of them, and he wounded the third. And he subsequently had a murder trial for what happened. And the main defense that he put on, self-defense claim. And I must say, after watching this trial for the past couple weeks and several days, his defense attorneys did a pretty good job. And the prosecution was, in my opinion, pretty abysmal. Maybe intentional or unintentional mistakes when presenting evidence, when questioning Rittenhouse specifically. Even to me, and we discussed this off camera, it appeared that maybe the prosecution wanted to have a mistrial on the case or in some way help the defense. This is pure speculation, but it's just based on the way that the head ADA prosecuted this case. So what are your initial thoughts about today's verdict, Dad?
Yeah, I am. I'm just, let me put it this way, Chloe. I'm glad we were not on the air talking about this an hour ago, because I would have been a very different person right now. I think I've had some time to process this, but it is heartbreaking. It's angering. The ramifications of a 17-year-old kid showing up at a Black Lives Matter protest, armed with an AR-15, subsequently shooting 3 people, killing 2 of them, and then found not guilty by a jury of, I believe, about 11 out of 12 people, and he walking away from that sends a very frightening message, very dangerous message to white extremists all over the country to come to these protests fully armed and take back your country and make America great again. That's the message that was sent from this verdict. As you said, we had an incompetent prosecution effort, maybe even more. We had a very biased judge, with all due respect to the bench. You know, we as attorneys, we have to respect the bench. But this judge from the get-go, Chloe, saying that the dead folks could be referred to as looters and rioters. Now, if I put my criminal defense hat on, I would have been hallelujah, hallelujah.
You literally, I was about to bring that up because we're wearing 2 hats as we discuss this. We're wearing the hat of criminal defense attorneys, but we're also the hat of Black people in this country who are against racial injustice. So as criminal defense attorneys, having Judge Schroeder as a judge on a murder trial that we were trying, just like you said, I would be praising hallelujah right now. First and foremost is because he has a policy where victims, people who have been killed or injured by the defendant, cannot be referred to as victims in his court unless the defendant is found guilty. And as a former prosecutor, I know how closely tied prosecutors are to the word victim and to their victims with their case in chief. They love referring to their victims. So the fact that in this Rittenhouse trial, that Rosenbaum, one of the men who was killed, Anthony Hoover, another of the men who was killed, were not allowed to be referred to as victims, but could even be referred to as rioters if the evidence showed that, and I'm quoting the judge, that's a victory in and of itself for the defense.
That's right. I mean, it started out very positive for the defense.
Yeah.
And then it just kept getting better and better for the defense. Mm-hmm. The judge threw out the weapons charge. The judge gave instructions from the bench that I've never seen instructions like that, quite frankly. He basically, from what I saw, he basically paraphrased the instructions. Here in Texas, the judges read them out verbatim, line upon line. I don't know. Maybe they do it different in Wisconsin, or maybe he did read them out and we just didn't see that. I don't know, but from what I saw, he paraphrased them. We saw him chewing out the prosecution, and man, I'd like to chew him out right now.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, I'd like to chew him out right this minute. Just very, very, very disheartening. And let me also try and contextualize what I'm feeling right now. This is America. Who was that? Childish Gambino who said that in a video? This is America. That means this country has 400 years of brutal, violent, racial oppression and terrorism. For 400 years. Not only the natives who live here, but also African Americans who were stolen and brought here and then enslaved have been the victims of a continuous campaign of violence and terror, oppression, brutality. And this verdict, this young man, a 17-year-old young man, showing up at a protest, carrying an AR-15. I mean, he was creating a dangerous situation. Shoot 3 people. Somebody made a really good point that many of those people didn't realize whether he was an active shooter or not. The prosecutor brought that out. So when they talked about, was it Rosenbaum or one of the other decedents pulling a gun? Well, yeah, because here's a guy running up and down the street with an AR-15. Is he shooting people? Who is he? What is he doing? I heard in one video someone asked him, did you just shoot somebody? And yet he walks away, not even a conviction with even the lesser included charges. So the message that is sent is to white extremists all over the country: show up at these protests, shoot people, claim self-defense, get on the stand and cry. We got you. We got you. And let me say this too. As far as I know, Chloe, both of the dead guys and the other shooting victim, and they are victims, all 3 of them are the heroes here. As far as we know, they were there to protest the shooting of Jacob Blake. They were there, and correct me, feel free to jump in and correct me if I'm off base here. But as far as we know, they were there in solidarity with Black Lives Matter.
Well, Rittenhouse's attorney obviously would not agree with you, Mark Richards. There's been reports that based on the testimony, he just gave a press conference about an hour ago in which he referred to Rosenbaum as a bad man. There were some reporting, various news outlets said that Rosenbaum, and it came up in testimony too, that he was bipolar, he was dealing with some mental illness, and that he was approaching Rittenhouse when Rittenhouse pulled out his gun and shot him at point blank range. But here's the thing, it came out in court via testimony that Rosenbaum was not armed, 1. 2, that Rittenhouse had already had his gun out when Rosenbaum was approaching him. But what happened is that those 12 jurors, they believed Rittenhouse in the defense's side of things, that he was defending himself, that he believed that he was in imminent danger of harm for his life, even though when Rosenbaum was apparently approaching him unarmed, that he needed to shoot Rosenbaum at point blank range. And then testimony came out from one of the other victims who survived, and I'm not going to butcher his name, but it starts with a G. He testified that just what you were mentioning earlier, he didn't know who Rittenhouse was and whether or not he was an active shooter. So when he heard the shooting that Rittenhouse did to Rosenbaum, this survivor testified that he followed Rittenhouse because he just saw that he was armed with the AR-15. And that when Rittenhouse turned and was going to shoot him, that's when he raised his hands, and it kind of stopped from there. So obviously, the defense team, even now, even after the trial, they painted the survivors and the dead men as bad men.
I'm gonna stand by what I said.
Yeah.
You know, whether he was bipolar or whatever, he was there. They were there, to our knowledge, as best as we know, in solidarity with Black Lives Matter. Now we're getting some comments here, Chloe. As I expected, Yuri Eldad, if I'm pronouncing his name correctly, he says, "Salute King Kyle the Lionheart." Okay, that's what he has to say.
That's not surprising.
All right.
There is
And
a
then
certain subset.
Then Mr. Eldad goes on to say he smoked a child molester. Who cares? All right. So, I don't know that he was a child molester. You got all kinds of news reports that are being put out there on social media and YouTube and so forth. So I can't speak on that, but we are going to show some of these comments because we want to show you where people are. We want to show you where we are in this nation and around this country where race is concerned. Okay. But again, most of those folks, a lot of the people who show up at these Black Lives Matter movements, protests, including whites, are there in solidarity with Black Lives Matter, against fascism, against white supremacy. And I salute those folks. Okay? Rather than the white supremacist who shows up and who are there to, to kill, to maim, to destroy and terrorize. All right? So I stand by that. In fact, we are representing someone who is heavily into the protest movement, and we're going to defend him vigorously. Okay? Yep. So we're not just talking the talk. We walk the walk. All right?
And we defended several protesters last year who were the subject of illegal arrests here in Dallas County, and their cases were dismissed.
Can you see? That's right. Exactly right. Let me go back to that. Can you see the comments?
Yes, I can.
Okay. All right. Let me put another one up here. King of the Game. They were there to burn and loot. So here's another one who apparently disagrees with us that they were there to in solidarity with Black Lives Matter. Here's a comment from someone who calls himself Donald Trump. He says, we have a right to defend ourselves. He killed a pedophile and another man who attacked him. You guys are heartless and need to stop watching the propaganda news. What's your feedback or response to that, to Donald Trump here?
Look, they have a right to their opinion. They have a right to comment what they feel. They obviously do not know us in real life and the work that we do. They don't know the time that we put into making sure that we get our information from a variety of sources. And the first thing that I want to point out is most of the people that go to the Black Lives Matter protests, just like you said, are there in solidarity with the right and existence of Black people in this country. But just like he mentioned, the propaganda media, the media likes to prop up these so-called violent incidents as well. And I want to note, it was reported that at the Jacob Blake protests, it was mostly nonviolent. And there only a few stores, I think, started to get attacked. But the police were there to try to stop it. So for the most part, these protests are nonviolent, and they are attended by a diverse group of people who are there to stand in solidarity with us, that our existence in this country is valid, that we have a right to be here and not to be targeted by the police, that the criminal reform needs to be changed, etc.
All right, and I want to address Donald Trump's right to defend ourselves comment. Listen, we are criminal defense lawyers. I have tried, and Chloe has prosecuted and tried self-defense cases. As a criminal defense lawyer, I have represented people in murder cases who claimed self-defense. I did that before Chloe and I started working together, before she even became a lawyer. I understand self-defense law, okay? I'm a practicing attorney. I know what self-defense law, at least here in Texas. And one of the things about self-defense is You can't create the dangerous situation yourself, kill somebody, and then claim that you are defending yourself. You created the situation that made the situation dangerous in the first place. So you can't provoke someone. You can't get the stuff started, shoot the guy, and say, "Oh, I did that in self-defense." That's not the way self-defense typically works. Okay? Now, so yes, we agree with you that we have the right to defend ourselves. There's no disagreement whatsoever about that. But I don't think I don't think self-defense was proven in this case because, again, Kyle Rittenhouse showed up at a protest that he had no business being at. He's not a police officer. He is a vigilante at best. He came armed, saying that he was coming to provide medical aid. How do you come to provide medical aid and shoot 3 people and kill 2 of them? He did the very opposite of what he said he came to do. Had he did what a 17-year-old boy should have been doing, which was stay home, let the adults handle this, let the police handle this, let law enforcement handle this, these people would be alive and the country would not have another blotch on its hands. That's my response to this self-defense stuff. I know self-defense law. I've represented folks who have claimed self-defense. And Kyle Rittenhouse, in my opinion, did not have a self-defense case.
And look, we are strong proponents of gun rights as well.
Absolutely.
We are
Thank
gun
you for
owners.
saying that, Chloe. Yes.
We are from the country. We are Southern people. I grew up around guns. My dad makes sure that me and my brother and my mom know how to do guns. I know how to handle a firearm. Before Texas changed its laws, I took a gun class and could become licensed to carry. We are gun owners. So we are not against people owning guns and defending themselves.
Well, let me say, in Texas, you don't even need a license to carry anymore.
Yeah, that changed. So, yeah.
If you can own a gun, if it's legal for you to own a gun, then you can have one. And as Chloe is saying, my daughter is saying, I'm a big Second Amendment person. I own many firearms. So that's not the issue here with us at all. Okay?
Yeah.
All right. We got somebody.
The issue is, oh, okay.
No, go ahead.
The issue is the unfairness in the criminal injustice system, as I call it, between the way that, Kyle Rittenhouse was seen versus the way a black defendant who would have done the same thing would be seen. That is what we're addressing today. That is the big issue. And it sets a bad precedent, in our opinion, because I agree with my dad, that a lot of these white supremacist groups are going to take this verdict and run with it when there are other protests in support of Black lives.
All right, we got another commenter here who says, I'm shocked the guy walked away. He should have been convicted for being stupid at least. Very right. Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you for that comment. Thank you for all the comments, even the ones that are.
For all of them.
Yeah, even the ones we disagree with. We appreciate your input and engagement. We just disagree with anybody who says that this young man should have walked away with this unscathed. There's another couple of comments. Now, anyone
keep
who's
the comments coming, guys.
Anyone who's just trolling, I'm not going to show the comment. Okay. But Glands says, it's open season on the streets. Better behave yourselves, commies. All right, so that's a troll, flat out, calling perhaps us and those of us who are out here fighting racial injustice commies. I am definitely not a communist. That is funny.
That makes me.
It's
Knowing you.
laughable. Yes.
Yeah.
But this person is right about one thing. It is open season on the streets. That is absolutely right. That is the whole message behind the Kyle Rittenhouse murder trial, his acquittal. That is exactly the message that is being sent. It is open season on the streets. And we're likely, I'm going to go ahead and say it again. We've already said it, Chloe. We're likely to get not guilty verdicts in the Ahmaud Arbery trial for the same type of reasons. 11 out of 12 white jury members. Race is all involved in this from top to bottom. So, and now the victims here were not black, they were white. But they were there once again protesting the shooting of a black man. So it's like the message is being sent to them as well. If you stand up for black people, your life is worthless also.
Yeah.
Okay, that message is there's so many messages that are being sent here. And so we got to, address them.
Yeah. I will say I watched a little bit of House's lead counsel, Mark Richards, his press conference after the verdict. And it did seem like he did not play into what Rittenhouse's previous attorney was doing, which is trying to raise money from these hate groups and make Rittenhouse like the face of a cause. It appeared from what he was saying that Mark Richards came in and he wanted to try the case on the merits and present the evidence. So I appreciate that as a defense attorney.
Yeah.
With him just doing his job. Yeah.
No, thank you for saying that too. We're defense lawyers, criminal defense lawyers, and we don't begrudge or bedevil a criminal defense lawyer for getting the result that he fought for or she fought for. So no, we're not begrudging that at all. Good job. We're all a part of the criminal defense bar. I just strongly disagree with this verdict.
Yeah, me too.
Someone said, did Kyle shoot black people? No, he didn't. He did not. But as I just said, he shot 3 people who were there because of the shooting of a black person. So it's why I said earlier that these folks were the good guys in this context. All this stuff about pedophiles and all, I don't know about all of that. Certainly anyone who is a pedophile does not, get our support. That's horrible. That's terrible. But I don't know that to be true. I'm not going to co-sign that. I've not seen anything about that. And of course, they always attack the character of the victim. Take, for example, Trayvon Martin. And by the way, if Trayvon Martin's situation had been judged by this jury, George Zimmerman would have been convicted. I know that sounds kind of funny, but think about it. Trayvon Martin would have had the opportunity to defend himself against a guy who was carrying a gun. Okay, Trayvon was unarmed. George Zimmerman's defense was he had to defend himself from this 13-year-old child. So had this jury been judging that, if the table was flipped, then Trayvon Martin would have been the good guy because he would have been defending himself against someone who had a gun. Well, that didn't happen, right? And so once again, the guy with the gun shooting the unarmed guy is the guy who walks away scot-free. And guess what? Both guys just happen to be white.
Yeah.
I'm not holding back today.
Let's keep it 100. Let's keep it 100 because the truth needs to be heard. And I want to reiterate again that
someone just corrected me and said Trayvon was older than 13. So maybe 17, 16, 17.
Yes. The point is he was a teenager. And I want to highlight again that the prosecution in this case, from what I saw, they were abysmal, especially the lead ADA. I think his name is Thomas Binger. it was just, I don't know. It was, for, to be the head, I can't, to be the head of one of the top ADAs at the district attorney's office up there. And some of the things that I saw were surprising, to say the least.
I can't pronounce this gentleman's name, but Corjars. I'm sorry, sir, if I'm mispronouncing your name, but he makes a good point. He did not shoot black people in response to the question earlier, but if he was black, he'd never walk away like this. Hold on a minute. I just got to do something for that. That just makes a lot of sense. Hold on just a minute.
I think I know what you're about to do.
Now, there is the comment of the hour.
Round of applause.
There is the comment of the hour. If Rittenhouse, instead of Kyle, had it been Jamal Black, who shot 3 white people, there is no self-defense law anywhere that would have got him off that.
I agree. And what is important about the night in question when Rittenhouse killed these 2 men and injured another is that before this, there was no deadly violence. It was not until Rittenhouse killed those 2 men where violence actually came into the scene, deadly violence. So, it's kind of ironic that he said he went across state lines to go to a protest to try to protect people and property. But it was actually him himself who killed people, not the protesters.
Someone said, I'm in shock. Who is he? A teenager that didn't get the last part of that, but I'm thinking that this commenter is in shock as we are about this verdict. And she rightly points out that this shooter is a teenager and should have never been there in the first place. That's the greater point.
And I want to bring this out. So this criminal trial against Rittenhouse may be done, but we also have a civil system as well. I would not be surprised if civil lawsuits name Rittenhouse as a defendant, and the families of these men try to seek justice that way. And what people need to know is that in civil courts, the standard of proof is a lot lower than in criminal courts. In criminal courts, the burden of proof the state has or the government has is beyond a reasonable doubt. In most civil courts, the standard of proof or the burden of proof is by a preponderance of the evidence. So a plaintiff, someone who sues another person, only has to put on enough evidence that their claim is true by a preponderance of evidence. And the way we were taught in law school, that's about 51% over 50%. So we'll see what happens civilly as well with these victims.
Yes, and the DOJ may also open up some sort of an investigation. So all of that is yet to be seen. Mr. Eldad said the baby, I think he's referring to the rapper, the baby killed someone in Walmart and got off. And another commenter made the same point. Look, again, listen, both of you gentlemen, we are criminal defense lawyers. We are criminal defense lawyers. We represent folks who have used force, even deadly force, on the basis of self-defense. We are not in any way, shape, form, or fashion disparaging self-defense law. We are not in any way disparaging the fact that people have the right to defend themselves. I would do so in a heartbeat. Okay? That's not what we're saying here. And to compare the baby with Kyle Rittenhouse is just, it's not a great comparison. It's comparing apples and oranges. Kyle Rittenhouse, a 17-year-old young white male, okay, shows up at a protest that is being conducted because the police shot a young black man. Kyle Rittenhouse has automatic privilege that the baby would never have. And I believe the baby's victim was another African-American male. And studies have shown when the victim is black, law enforcement, the criminal justice system is not as much concerned about that victim. So it doesn't surprise me. And I don't know the facts of the DaBaby case at all. I am aware of him having shot someone in, I believe, Walmart, and that he was able to beat that case. I am aware of that. I don't know the details, the ins and the outs. My point is, don't compare the DaBaby situation with Kyle Rittenhouse. Two completely different situations, totally. But yes, once again, self-defense is absolutely a good thing. And we believe in it. We have defended folks on the basis of self-defense. We don't think that self-defense was applicable in this situation, again, because he created the dangerous situation that he found himself in, literally running up and down the streets with an AR-15 around his shoulders. Those folks, as the prosecution brought out, were not certain whether he was there as an active shooter or not. So he created that mayhem in an already volatile situation.
Yeah. And just to highlight, I mean, we just defended a few months ago in a trial, and we used self-defense as a claim. So we are not arguing in any way against self-defense. We use self-defense trials every single day when we go to trial, and nearly in a lot of these trials. So don't take our comments that way. We're merely highlighting the differences, the way the criminal injustice system in a lot of ways treats black and white defendants. Let's just keep it 100. Also, we don't know the circumstances of what happened with the debate with DaBaby and the shooting in that instance. He may have been defending himself as well. So they're not comparable.
Yes, Mr. Aldad. He is really engaged here. He says the dangerous situation is the riot. So in other words, Kyle Rittenhouse didn't create the dangerous situation. It was already created. Well, protest is not necessarily a riot. Protests can get out of hand, but peaceful protests are not riots. All right? And, you know, people love to characterize them that way, you know, riot, looting. We've represented, as Chloe said, we've represented people who were peacefully protesting and called rioters. And thank God we were able to get those cases dismissed, because once we begin to pull out the facts, once we begin to produce video, once we began to produce witnesses, we were able to show that what folks were calling a riot were, again, for our clients, just their mere presence. They were not there rioting. All right. And I think in this case, the prosecution was able to put forth evidence that showed, for the most part, that protest was not violent. It was not rioting. Is that right, Chloe?
It is. And the prosecution asked for a jury instruction, which included the definition of provocation, which is where if the person claiming self-defense provoked the other person, then using self-defense using the defense of self-defense can be barred. And the judge actually allowed that jury instruction in. Obviously, the jurors, when they were deliberating, felt that Kyle Rittenhouse did not. And you know what? I love the engagement that we're having, even with people who strongly disagree with us. I love that this gentleman is making comments and voicing his opinions.
Yeah, and what I like about his comments too are they are respectful. Right. They disagree. He disagrees with us, but they are respectful. Unlike this comment that says the protests are extremely violent and destructive. Your opinion is either ignorant or a blatant denial of reality. I am many things, but I'm not ignorant. Okay, not ignorant. Very knowledgeable about the law. I've been in this space over 20 years. Okay, so make your comments. Disagree even strongly. That's fine. We're lawyers. We're used to people disagreeing with us, but do so respectfully.
Right. So when we're, pondering this verdict, what are some of the key takeaways that you take from this verdict, Dad?
Yeah, I know you're being the objective lawyer and trying to deal with the legal matters. I'm engaging with folks. That's why I wanted to do it live.
Yeah, I'm glad.
Yeah, I'm gonna follow your suit and do the legal analysis as well. A couple more comments though. Ray B, how did Kyle create the situation? He asks. Well, Mr. B, Ray B, I wasn't there, so I can't give you a definitive answer about who created the situation. I'm just making the general observation that if a guy is in a volatile situation, he is armed with an automatic rifle and he's running up and down the streets with that rifle on his arms, don't you think that is going to create an even dangerous situation? It's going to make it even more dangerous. I mean, that's common sense. That's common sense. All right. And I saw some of the video, and some of the folks were really responding to Kyle. Some of the folks they didn't know, is this guy out here shooting people? I heard one person on the video, did you just shoot somebody? And Kyle lied and said he pulled a gun on me, and no one had pulled a gun on him in that instance. Okay? So he definitely exacerbated what could have, I'll give it to you, that the situation was already volatile. I've said that. He exacerbated that situation. He made that situation more dangerous. And perhaps those two people would still be living had he stayed home and allowed the police to do their job. He was nothing more than a vigilante. That's why we have law enforcement. We allow law enforcement. We've commissioned, deputized, and authorized law enforcement to keep the peace, not George Zimmerman type vigilantes. That's not supposed to be the way we do things here in America.
And according to the Oxford Language Dictionary, a vigilante is a member of a self-appointed group of citizens who undertake law enforcement in their community without legal authority, typically because the legal agencies are thought to be inadequate. So Cal, he was not a member of any legal agency. He did not have legal authority to be there. So by definition, he was a vigilante. Now in Texas, there is something in self-defense law that is called the defense of others, where a person is justified in deadly force when they are protecting a third person or another person. If Kyle was here in Texas, I don't even believe that defense of others would apply because from what I saw with his testimony, he did not articulate that he was defending one specific person, that he was justified in using deadly force to defend a specific person, or even defend, and nevertheless to even defend himself with self-defense. So, his justification for even being at the protest was that he wanted to provide protection and provide aid if medical aid was needed. But when he was there was no one that needed protection.
Okay. All right. Someone says here, yeah, right. 17-year-old kid providing medical help with a rifle. only in the USA. Absolutely. I mean,
That's the
that's just common sense too.
That's the contrast. Proclaiming to provide medical aid with a AR-15.
Someone asked Mr. Ray B, unfairness. What about the peoples whose homes and businesses were burnt? Look, we don't support looting and burning buildings. That's law breaking. That's illegal. We don't support that at all. We're not here to lend support to that type of behavior. We strongly, as for example, as a father, I would be very, very disappointed if my children showed up at a protest and began to riot and loot. We've taught them better than that. That's not the way that you deal with frustration from 4 centuries of racial oppression. But it was Dr. Martin Luther King who said riots are really the voice of the unheard. That doesn't justify the riots, but it just says these folks. I remember the Kerner Commission report, a report that was issued back during the riots of the 60s. And that brilliant report just brought out all of the reasons why we see around these injustices, people rioting and looting and burning. And the Kerner Commission report brought out how it is because of just centuries of oppression, centuries of terrorism and brutality, centuries of just being massively reduced and relegated to second-class citizenship and seemingly no way of ever breaking through that. You know, if you're not an African American, you don't understand that. I get that. But when you live in a country that has the legacy of this country and still to this day does everything it can to keep black people in their place, it's like being smothered with a wet blanket. Once again, that doesn't, in my mind, justify looting and rioting. And most of the Black Lives Matter protests and protesters are not violent and have not been violent. That's been proven. So no one's building or business should be burnt down. And quite often when those things happen, they tend to happen in the black community anyway. So it's oftentimes black homes and businesses that are being burnt down. We don't agree with that. Don't get it twisted. That's not what we're saying. We're simply saying that self-defense in our minds were not applicable in this case because Kyle Rittenhouse created the dangerous situation that he then claimed gave rise to his self-defense, deadly force, use of deadly force.
Yep.
Someone said, well, what was Rittenhouse supposed to do? Just allow himself to get beaten up and possibly killed? He was supposed to stay home. He was not supposed to show up as a vigilante armed with an AR-15. He was supposed to do what 17-year-olds should have been doing. Home. 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 You show up at a situation like that, all kinds of stuff going on, and you got a rifle, an assault rifle. Where I come from, that means you're looking for trouble. So when you ask the question, what was Rittenhouse supposed to do? He was supposed to stay home. He was not, even old enough to be a law enforcement officer. They were out there with their tanks, with their guns. They are the ones who are supposed to handle that. We don't need, and this is the overriding point here, we don't need violent white supremacists, extremists, vigilantes showing up at these places shooting people. And that's what this verdict says. And that's why it concerns me so much. That's what happened in the Ahmaud Arbery case. The same thing. And the George Zimmerman case. We don't need Travis McMichael, his father, and somebody else jumping in their pickup trucks and trapping black men like rats, shooting them in the midsection with shotguns, claiming they were trying to keep the neighborhood safe. That's a vigilante. We don't need that.
And you know what's so ironic about it? A lot of those groups say that they back the blue, that they support law enforcement, that they support the police, yet they don't allow the police to do their jobs. So if they had some suspicion that a crime was being committed, why not call the police? Why not allow law enforcement to do their jobs instead of taking matters into their own hands? So again, to me, that's just a little bit more of a hypocrisy with some of these groups who say, you know, back the blue, support the police, yet then they go and take all of these matters into their own hands.
Chloe, we got this question that we got to answer.
Okay.
Braylon says, what does this case have to do with race? Go ahead.
It has everything to do with race. As attorneys who see the impact that race has from the moment that a person is arrested by the police to the unfair plea deals that are put against black defendants versus white defendants, to the lack of diversity with a lot of jury panels, to the discrimination from the bench in some instances, the criminal justice system and race cannot be separated. In this case specifically, Rittenhouse was there at a protest, a Black Lives Matter protest, where people were protesting the shooting of a black man by a white police officer. That's the reason why he was there. Race was the reason why he was in Kenosha, Wisconsin from the very beginning. And so race brought him there, and race now in a circle has got him acquitted. That's what race has to do with this case and with the criminal justice system as a whole. What we're doing is we're using this case to try to shed light on the way that race has permeated, and racism, let me be specific, racism has permeated the criminal justice system since the foundation of this country. This case is a highlight of it. That's what race has to do with this case. Race cannot be taken out of this case.
I mean, I can't say it any better than that, Chloe. I think you hit the nail on the head. I believe the crowd would applaud you. You made it simple. I mean, the criminal justice system is racist from top to bottom, as Chloe just said, from contact with the police to the disproportionate percentage of black people, especially men who are in prison, the school to prison pipeline. But to answer your question, Mr. Braylon, specifically, what does this case have to do with race? Well, Kyle Rittenhouse, young, white, 17-year-old male, a white judge, 11 out of 12 reportedly of the jury members were reportedly white. The the whole thing kicked off because Jacob Blake should not have been shot in the first place. Had he not been a black man, there probably would not have been a police shooting that left him crippled. Race is all over this case. Race is all over everything in America. Okay? Everything in America has racial overtones. All right? And oftentimes are just right flat out racist. Okay? Miss Pigeon, Gwen Pigeon, thank you, Augustus and Chloe, for your thoughtful coverage. I appreciate your input on this travesty of justice. Thank you so much, Miss Pigeon. We're trying as hard as possible to educate, to enlighten, to just show folks, to demonstrate and show people all the injustice that we see, not only as lawyers, but what we deal with our own selves. Quick story, very quick story. In 2019, after church, I'm a pastor, by the way, in addition to being a lawyer. After I preached my Sunday message, my family and I, we went to have dinner after church. And after dinner, we went to a movie theater. And while we were buying the tickets, and it was an upscale movie theater, while we were buying the tickets, the person helping my daughter, Chloe here, was very, very, very rude to her and subsequently to us. Now, we were the only African Americans in line. There were whites, there were Asians, there were Latinos. We were the only black family. And so I said, hey, why are you treating us like this? We can afford to be here. I know this is an upscale movie theater in an upscale part of town, but why are we being treated this way? We can more than afford to be here. And the rudeness got worse. So we stood up, and eventually they called the general manager of the movie theater, happens to be an African-American man. I just knew that we would finally get some answer and some understanding from someone who knows what it feels like being racially profiled. And he was ruder than she was. And ultimately called the police on us. And me, my daughter, and my son were all locked up and spent a night in jail because we stood up to being racially profiled. Spent a night in jail. I'm an attorney and a pastor. We had just left church. And my wife, I, Chloe, my son, they were almost about to arrest my wife. And because we stood up, we were racially profiled and just took a stand. That is the type of stuff that we deal with on a daily basis. Psychologists call it, sociologists calls it microaggressions. Sometimes you may not be called the N-word. Sometimes it may be something as simple as getting followed in a store or being treated like you don't belong, or you having to show twice as much ID to do a bank transaction as the white person who didn't have to show any ID, who was just in front of you. Just sometimes just microaggressions that you better not stand up against, because if you do, then you're going to really pay the price, because they're going to call the police on you. Okay? So we know about how race affects everything in America in answer to that question. But once again, Ms. Pigeon, thank you for that comment. Thank you very much.
Thank you for thank you all for engaging with us and writing your opinions. We appreciate the engagement. Keep it up even if you disagree with us or don't understand where we're coming from.
Someone commented, I think this is a very good comment, Chloe. They asked us any comment on the prosecutor commenting on Kyle's Fifth Amendment rights. Please take that. In fact, Chloe's a former prosecutor. She can really address that.
Yeah, that was a huge misstep. That was a very huge misstep. I addressed this in a previous video that we did. Everyone who has graduated from law school and is now a practicing attorney knows that a person has a right against self-incrimination. Period.
Even people who watch Law and Order should know that.
Yes. We do not have to incriminate ourselves when we are accused of a crime, when we are charged with a crime. And when we are arrested, if we don't talk, if we decide to exercise our Fifth and Sixth Amendment rights, to ask for legal counsel, to remain silent, that cannot be used against us in future prosecution or at trial. So the fact that the prosecutor in this case tried to question Rittenhouse on him remaining silent after he was arrested, I mean, that was a huge no-no. And I actually agree with the judge that it was going into areas that could be a constitutional violation of Rittenhouse's rights, because it's just a basic fundamental right that every person in this country has. We have the right not to say anything about anything or anything that would incriminate us or answer any questions of law enforcement or anyone else. So I believe that the prosecutor, that was a huge misstep, and I think he did it honestly intentionally. I don't know how you can be a practicing attorney, especially a criminal law attorney, and not know that. So that was a huge. Thank you for that question, Ray.
So that's a great question. Yes, that was definitely a misstep on the prosecutor. We think it was a misstep on the prosecutor's
Could have
point.
been intentional. We don't know.
Well,
Yeah.
you know, we don't know. I mean,
we don't know. That's speculating, but
yeah. Actually, the truth of the matter is, I think we said this early on, we would have just enjoyed having a judge like this if we were in his courtroom and he was throwing all these softballs to us like that. I mean, first and foremost, telling the prosecutor you can't refer to these folks as victims. You can refer to them as looters and rioters. We would have walked out of the courtroom, went in the hallway and said, can you believe what he did? I mean, we just don't see that. Yeah. We just don't. Wow. I just hope to see more judges like that when we're in trial, Chloe. I mean,
yeah, me too. Because the prosecutors, they practice in those judges' courts every single day. As defense attorneys, we may be in the same courthouse, but we're in various courts. But in the way most courthouse works, or the way most district attorney offices works, is that they put a particular prosecutor in one judge's court for the most part. And that is the court that you practice out of unless you get moved to a different one. So the judges see those prosecutors all the time. And I mean, obviously there is some sort of, help me say this, Dad, because I don't want to say special relationship, but there is some commonality there.
No, there is.
Because the prosecutors are
in their courtrooms every day.
Every day.
I mean, they're like co-workers. And of course,
exactly.
You know, and that's not to disparage judges, because judges are to be neutral. And most of the judges, the overwhelming majority of judges I know are fair-minded judges. No question about it. Some of them seem to have a bent toward the state, but very, very few of them are bent toward the defense, especially as much as this judge was.
Yeah.
And so I guess there are people out there wondering, would this judge have been that bent toward the defense had everything been the opposite? You know, let's say Kyle was a black 17-year-older who had just shot 3 people, killed 2 of them. You know, would the judge have been as magnanimous? I don't know.
I don't know.
We got a good question here. The guy who provided the weapon and got charged for giving Rittenhouse access to the firearm, do you think charges will be dropped on him as well, based solely on the not guilty verdicts of Rittenhouse? All we can do is speculate on this one, Ms. Whittuck.
Yeah.
We are licensed in Texas, not in Wisconsin, so we don't know Wisconsin law. But just based on your question, the judge did drop the weapons case against Rittenhouse. Whether the judge would extend that same grace to the person who allegedly provided the weapon to Rittenhouse, I don't know. And she asked the question, Chloe, based on the fact that Rittenhouse was found not guilty. I would venture to say that if the charges were dropped, it wouldn't necessarily be because Rittenhouse was found not guilty. That's two separate cases. I would assume and hope that the case would be against the person who provided the weapon. I would hope and assume that case would be assessed based on the facts and the law of that case, and not just because Rittenhouse was found not guilty.
Yeah, in a lot of these cases, 90% of criminal cases end with a plea deal between the state and the defendant. So I wouldn't be surprised if the state offers some type of plea bargain to the man who provided this gun to Rittenhouse, and they come up to some sort of agreement that way. And by the way, that's actually Chris from back home, Dad. Chris with a K. That's Sister Monica's son, Chris, I think.
Oh.
Just wanted to point that out.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh.
I think. Yeah.
All right. Well, hey, Chris. Good to hear from you, man. Yes, it's good to hear from you. Give your family our regard. Absolutely. Absolutely. Amen. Yes, fine young man, fine family, fine people, good people, my people. Absolutely. Yes. Thank you, Chris, for that question. So now somebody said here, and I want to answer that question as well. Let me see, is this the one? So Mr. Justin says, no, you're so against him. I assume he's talking about Rittenhouse. You can't see the fact that a child felt like he was going to get killed. Well, Justin, again, my point is, yes, this child should have been home. That is the point I keep making. This child should not have shown up in that dangerous situation armed with an AR-15. He should have been home watching it on TV or playing video games,
TikTok or something,
or whatever he does on his spare time. And people had speculated. I think the mother denied having taken him to the bus or train or plane or whatever to travel to Kenosha. I think she denied that. And here in Texas, someone who does something of that nature could be charged with child endangerment for helping a child or for assisting a child in becoming involved in a dangerous situation like that. I mean, he should have stayed home. That's what I'm saying. Stay home. Had he stayed home, these two men would be alive today. That's the point that I'm making.
Yeah. And with with an assault rifle. And like we said, when we were children, you showed us how to handle firearms as young kids. We held it. You showed us how to properly shoot it, how to properly handle a firearm. But we had parental and adult supervision while we were handling those firearms. Rittenhouse took his AR-15 into the middle of a protest by himself as a child.
Yep. Someone said here, he doesn't need a justification to be there. He had the freedom to be there just like anyone else that was there. Well, we're not talking about justification to be there. We're talking about whether it was wise, prudent, smart for a 17-year-old kid to be there fully armed with an AR-15. 15. Let me just put it this way. As a parent, all you can trust me and believe that I would have been very, very upset if either of my children had been in a situation like that, armed with an AR-15 out in the middle of a riot, or, and I'm using their word, in the middle of a riot. That makes it even worse. Again, I think it was more protesting, but obviously it was volatile. I'll grant that it was volatile. But let's again say it was a riot. All the more reasons why he shouldn't have been there. And as a parent, I would have thumped the heads of my children who had went to a situation like that armed. I mean, I would have been like, hey, you could have gotten yourself killed, killed somebody else, which he did. All of those consequences would have been completely avoidable had he stayed home. I don't know why that's not just so obvious.
Well, let's analyze it legally as well, because Elvira here, she asked the question, he had the freedom to be there. I mean, obviously we have the freedom to travel between various states, if you don't have any, if there's no exceptions to that. But he had the rifle, which he was not legally entitled to have. And he took it into the middle of a protest. So I will argue that even legally, he did not have the right to be there either.
Okay. That's right. That charge was dropped, though. The judge dropped it.
The charge was dropped.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, all right, someone asked, I don't even see how his presence, a boy of 17, our friend from Croatia, who points out that he himself is a white male. And he says, I don't even see how his presence, a boy of 17 with an AR-15 amidst protesters, would not lead to this. I had to give you a shout out on that one. How would that not happen? A boy, 17 years old with an AR-15 in the midst of protesters. And if it was as violent and riotous as they've been trying to make it, all the more reason he should have stayed home.
Yeah, that was the wise thing to do.
Yes. All right. So we're going to, I wanted to get up here and express some things and answer some questions and respond to some of this stuff. Someone did ask earlier, what evidence do I have that Kyle is a white supremacist? The prosecutor had access to his phone and socials, and yet nothing came out about him being a white supremacist. I'm not sure. In fact, I did not call Kyle a white supremacist. And I define white supremacist completely different than most other people. Most people consider white supremacist as someone who is a blatant, hateful racist. That's not what I mean when I use the term white supremacist. A white supremacist, in my mind, is primarily a white person who believes that whites are superior, are supreme. People of color, especially blacks, are inferior. And therefore, whites should be leading, running, controlling the country, the systems of the country, the machinery of the country, because of their supposed superior, supreme status. There are many white supremacists who would argue that they don't hate black people. that I have black friends. We have blacks in our family. I've never harmed a black person. I mean, there are many white supremacists who would say that because, again, they are basing their understanding and definition of white supremacy on this blatant hatred. I'm not saying that. I already said, in my mind, a white supremacist is anyone who thinks consciously or subconsciously that the white race is supreme, superior, and therefore should be in control or in power. That's why we hear the mantra, take back our country. When we hear take back our country, it's as if we're not even here. It's as if we're not citizens of this country. And if we are, get in your place. This is our country. We run it. We control it. We are the whites here. This is ours. That is a white supremacist mindset. So you don't have to be carrying a KKK card or wearing a swastika or a rebel flag or any of that to be a white supremacist, because those things just means that someone is sort of a blatant, hateful white supremacist. But there are plenty passive, quiet, even nice, respectable, church-going white supremacists.
And the way I see it too is kind of the view that white or Western culture is superior to other cultures. I hear a lot of people say, well, I think Western culture is superior to Eastern culture, and of course that's Asian, African, Eastern European, South American. And so because our white and or Western culture is superior, we should be the ones leading the country. We should be the ones making the decisions. We should be the ones at the top because our culture is superior, is loftier, is better. That's how I define white supremacy as well. It may not even be, just like you said, a hate of black people or minorities, but a feeling that my culture, my white culture or Western culture is superior than theirs.
Yes, that's right. That's a very, very good point. That's an excellent point that extrapolates, what I'm saying, not just individuals. And even before we get to white culture, the systems of America. It's the reason why we say so often that America is systemically racist, because the systems are inundated with white supremacists. Okay. So, and then on a cultural level, absolutely, Claude, that's a very good point. Someone said here that, we're coming to a close. Someone said here, see if I can find it. These kinds of comments amuse me. The only racists in U.S. are you.
That's not even worth responding to.
True.
Gustavo Cordoba,
Let's move.
Okay. But I really do appreciate all of the engagement with the people who disagree with us. The non-trolls, but who just see the situation fundamentally different than us. Obviously, the jury in this case, they saw it different from us. They were the ones that were, sitting in the courtroom for hours and hours, for over 3 weeks, listening to the evidence, and all 12 of them believe what Rittenhouse claimed, that he was in fear of his life and he needed to kill and injure those men because of self-defense and defending himself. So that is what the jury came out to. But I do love the engagement that we're getting on this, even with people who disagree with us. I hope you all are getting something from, if you disagree with us, from a perspective that is different from your own. We are trying to articulate how a lot of people who are frustrated with the discrimination in this country feel.
Chloe,
Even if you don't understand it or disagree with it. Yeah.
I'm sorry. No, go ahead. Finish your thought.
We hope you get something from it.
There are some folks here who agree with you that perhaps the prosecutor didn't make a misstep. He intentionally did some of the things he did. I don't know.
I don't know, but some of the things that he did were a little bit out of pocket, in my personal opinion.
Okay. Is there anything else we need to talk about?
No, we just wanted to come up here and voice our opinions, not just as attorneys, but as human beings, as Black folks in this country who have been, subject to racism, who see the structural racism and discrimination that are in a lot of our systems, whether it be the education system, the criminal justice system, the prison system, the health system. And we just wanted to express how we felt with this verdict and kind of the lens that we see it legally. That there are going to be civil lawsuits that are filed against Rittenhouse if they have not been filed already by the victims' families in this case. But hey, this is the system that we're in. The jury heard and listened to all of the evidence, watched all of the drone footage, and they acquitted Rittenhouse, even though we strongly disagree with it.
All right. So, Chloe, I think we've come to the end of this. I really enjoyed it a lot.
I did too. And continue, even when we go out this live, put your comments down below. We want people to have spirited debates. We just want them to be respectful. But debate. Let's have this conversation. This is a conversation that is going to continue for years and years to come. Again, my name is Chloe Corbett, aka the Duchess of Justice. That's my pops, Augustus Corbett, aka the Minister of Justice. We are the Defiant Lawyers. We are practicing attorneys. We will upload videos every Wednesday and Thursday and Sunday of the week, Saturday of the week, and we look forward to continuing to engage with you all. That's all I have to say. Anything else, Dad?
I'm done. I just appreciate all your thoughtful commentary. I appreciate all the thoughtful comments by the people who made comments that, they disagreed with us on many points, but that's okay. We're fine with that. Most of them kept it respectful. And so we're out of here. Yeah, that's it. Anything else?
That's it. Happy Thanksgiving. Enjoy your time with your family. We'll see you in the next video. Bye-bye.